Madhava Kunja Bihare. Gopi Jana Balava Giri Baradhare. Gopi Jana Balava Giri Baradhare. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachare. Yamunatira Vanachare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jai, Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Status Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Shri Radha Radhanath Ki Shri Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Sankirtan Yagya Ki Go Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And this, oh, it's there, is it? Anyway, the power is plugged in. Yeah, okay. Okay, so devotees, we are reading this morning from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 2, Daksha curses Lord Shiva, and we're reading verses 14 and 15. Could you please tell me which verse or verses you have on the sheets? On the 14 and 16. Okay, so we will just read, because it's 14 and 15. Okay, we will just read 14, and I will read 15 myself. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we'll read verse 14. Preta Vasesho Goresho Pretar Bhuta Ganar Vrita Atati Unmatavan Nagno Vyopta Kesho Hasan Rudan Preta Viseshu Goreshu Pretarabuta Ganarvrita Atat Yun Matavan Nagno Vyoptakesho Hasan Rudan Preta Viseshu Goreshu Pretarabuta Ganarvrita Atat Yun Matavan Nagno Vyoptakesho Hasan Rudan Pretavaseshu Goreshu Pretarabuta Ganarvrita Atat Yun Matavan Nagno Vyoptakesho Hasan Rudan. Mataji's. Goreshu Prabhuta Ganavrita Atat Yun Matavan Nagno Dakesho Hasan Radam Pritavaseshu Goreshu Prabhuta Ganavrita Dadyon Matavanyadno Yoptakesho Hasan Radam. Okay, so there's verse 15 here also. I'll just read the Sanskrit. Sitabhasma krita snana pretasran nrasti bhushana Shivapadesho hyashivo mato mata janapriya pati pramata nathanam tamo matrat makatmanam. Preta avashesho. At the burning places of dead bodies. Goresho. Horrible. Pretai. By the pretas. Bhutaganai. By the Bhutas. Vritan. Accompanied by. Atati. He wanders. Unmatavat. Like a madman. Nagna. Naked. Vyuptakesha. Having scattered here. Hasan. Laughing. Rudan. Crying. Okay, so I'll read the translation. That was just the word for verse 14. I'll read the translations for both verses now. He lives in filthy places like crematoriums, and his companions are ghosts and demons. Naked like a madman, sometimes laughing and sometimes crying. He smears crematorium ashes all over his body. He does not bathe regularly, and he ornaments his body with a garland of skulls and bones. Therefore, only in name is he Shiva, or auspicious. Actually, he is the most mad and inauspicious creature. Thus he is very dear to crazy beings in the gross mode of ignorance, and he is their leader. Oh gosh, this is Daksha speaking, and he's just so much overboard, and it's terrible, just terrible. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who do not regularly bathe are supposed to be in association with ghosts and crazy creatures. Lord Shiva appeared to be like that, but his name, Shiva, is actually fitting, for he is very kind to persons who are in the darkness of the mode of ignorance, such as unclean drunkards who do not regularly bathe. Lord Shiva is so kind that he gives shelter to such creatures and gradually elevates them to spiritual consciousness. Although it is very difficult to raise such creatures to spiritual understanding, Lord Shiva takes charge of them, and therefore, as stated in the Vedas, Lord Shiva is all auspicious. Thus, by his association, even such fallen souls can be elevated. Sometimes it's seen that great personalities meet with fallen souls, not for any personal interest, but for the benefit of those souls. In the creation of the Lord, there are different kinds of living creatures. Some of them are in the mode of goodness, some are in the mode of passion, and some are in the mode of ignorance. Lord Vishnu takes charge of persons who are advanced, Krishna-conscious Vaishnavas, and Lord Brahma takes charge of persons who are very much attached to material activities. But Lord Shiva is so kind that he takes charge of persons who are in gross ignorance and whose behavior is lower than that of the animals. Therefore, Lord Shiva is especially called auspicious. Yes, okay. Pretavaseshu goreshu pretar bhuta ganarvita atatyun matavan nagno vyuptakeshu hasan radan chitta sita Sita Bhasma. No, it's Chitta. Actually, it's Chitta Bhasma Kritasnana, Pretasran Rasti Bhushana, Shivapadeshu Hyashivo, Mato Mata Janapriya, Pati Pramata Nata Nam, Tamo Matrat Makatmanam. He lives in filthy places like crematoriums, and his companions are the ghosts and demons. Naked like a madman, sometimes laughing and sometimes crying, he smears crematorium ashes all over his body. He does not bathe regularly, and he ornaments his body with a garland of skulls and bones. Therefore only in name is he Shiva or auspicious. Actually, he is the most mad and inauspicious creature. Thus, he is very dear to crazy beings in the gross mode of ignorance, and he is their leader. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachyadeshnarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyas chakripas sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Well, yes, as we see, Daksha is really making extreme criticism. It's really crude and severely abusive and severely offensive. Yeah, and therefore, this pastime is particularly helpful and just very clear and very vivid for people like us who are conditioned by material life. This pastime is makes its point or points very, very clearly that don't offend. If you offend, you'll get into very big trouble. If you offend enough, or even just if you offend, you'll go mad, particularly if a person becomes like a really avid offender. They'll actually lose their minds. Yes. So this is what's happening to Daksha. He's losing his mind. Just because Lord Shiva wouldn't or didn't stand up for Daksha when he came into the assembly there of that big fire yajna, Daksha's become so extremely angry. Anger is part of the nature of the living entity, along with desire and hatred. So these things are there, but when one becomes ruled by anger, then one simply calls upon oneself great misfortune and extreme inauspiciousness, just like Srila Prabhupada makes the point. Srila Prabhupada makes the point on a few occasions that the frogs, we have experience, of course. I mean, this we don't really have experience of, but the specific point that Prabhupada makes about the frogs, but we have experience in one sense, that the frogs, they croak all night. And the way Srila Prabhupada puts it is, they think it's nice. Like devotees sing the glories of the Lord. They sing the Mahamantra, they sing bhajans, and it is nice. It's often very tuneful, so it's very pleasant, but more than anything, it's full of love, it's full of bhakti, devotion. And therefore it is truly, it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable and it's beneficial. And by calling out to Krishna in these ways, one is calling Krishna closer to oneself. And one is step by step reawakening one's forgotten relationship with Krishna. And in due course, as we read, it was in the Leelamrita a week ago perhaps, that eventually, because of calling out to Krishna nicely like this, Krishna will appear to us and speak to us and accept us, and we'll enter into his eternal association. But the frogs, Prabhupada was saying that they think like that. They think they're singing very nicely, although, anyway, they think like that. But the frog is one of the natural foods for the snake. And so by calling out, croaking like that, on and on and on and on, the snake knows where his meal is situated and can come straight there, and doesn't even have to worry about chasing or sneaking up or anything like that. Yes. Fortunately, we don't have snakes here. I saw a snake once. Have you seen a snake here? Many? A few times? I just saw once over by the entrance on that side. Yeah, but otherwise, just out in the wild, then the snakes, they do very nicely. And therefore, the so-called singing of the frog, he's just calling for death. Death, I'm here. Here I am. Come on. Come and get me. In effect, he doesn't think like that, but in effect, that's what is happening. So similarly, one who gets possessed by anger, well, people who get possessed by any sort of material consciousness, lust, anger, greed, pride, all these things, they are calling misfortune upon themselves. And this is exactly what Daksha is doing, and we'll see in a little while, in a couple of chapters, I think, how misfortune comes upon him, and he ends up with the head of a goat. Oh, it's just shocking, disgusting. So, but at the moment, he's thinking, yes, I'm right. What I'm doing is right, and it's true. But it's not true, and it's not right. And as we've just been saying, he is simply calling misfortune inauspicious, here I am, come and make my life terrible. And what is that? It's madness. Yes, I was reading this morning, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport to this verse also. And he makes an interesting point that because Daksha is, he's he's a member of demigod society, at least one can say that. He's Prajapati. He's directly one of the sons of Lord Brahma, so he's not just some miscellaneous conditioned soul from deep in the material world, just lost in material life. He's a special person. Prabhupada has made that point also in one of these purports we read, that Daksha is a special person. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes the point that Daksha uses the term unmata vat. Unmata means mad or a madman, but vat means like a madman. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes the point that, you could say that Daksha may not have completely lost it, because it could be argued that he's saying that he's not exactly a madman, but he's like a madman, which someone who's like a madman may just be temporarily in such a state, and it's not so bad as being just completely a madman. But then he does go on to say, of course, that he is the most mad and inauspicious, and not just inauspicious person, but inauspicious creature. And when in the mood of anger and chastisement and frustration, a bewildered, conditioned soul starts referring to other human beings as if they're animals, then you must know their consciousness is really just in a shocking state. So this is a warning. This is a warning. Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us lessons, and it teaches us lessons by giving vivid examples of what the lesson is to be learned. So you get Prahlad Maharaj, what a vivid example. Someone, an innocent devotee child, being harassed in such a fantastic, terrible way by his father, but then being protected in also such a fantastic way by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The whole thing is so dramatic, and the lessons are just so clear. A Jamiel, a pious Brahmin who became degraded like just a pathetic example of materialism, but then gets delivered by the chanting of the names despite everything, but also despite his chanting of the holy names not being very good, just calling out for his son. So it's vivid, it's clear that look at this, how the holy names can deliver, even under such circumstances, and so on and so forth. So this is also a very vivid example. Someone who should know better. He must know better. It's just so shocking and unexpected that he doesn't know better. But he's just making such offenses, and then he's going to pay such a price. We must learn from this. So anyway, he is criticizing, or trying to criticize, Lord Shiva in different ways by pointing out what he feels are very, very outstanding disqualifications on the part of Lord Shiva. Srila Prabhupada doesn't actually mention it here, but no, he doesn't. But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes the point that yes, Daksha is right. Lord Shiva is mad. He's mad with Krishna prema, which is true. He's just so intoxicated with love for the Supreme Lord that he just is completely oblivious to material circumstances. In fact, in Nectar of Devotion, in the chapter 19, which is describing the devotee on the level of Krishna prema, the basic characteristics. One of the characteristics is that the activities of a devotee on the level of Krishna prema cannot be understood from the material point of view, or at least sometimes. And Srila Prabhupada, of course, was on the level of Krishna prema, and sometimes, even for the devotees, he would do some things and make some decisions, and the devotees would think, this doesn't make sense. But in due course, they found out that it did make sense. But at the time, they couldn't understand. So Lord Shiva is like that. He's mad in love for the Lord. Vaishnavanam yata shambhus, just the greatest Vaishnav. And he acts in these extraordinary ways. Well, there are different extraordinary ways in which he acts, but some of them, quite a few of them, are to attract and in that way help the extremely degraded souls, extremely degraded, who, when people become too much attached to alcohol and they become like extreme alcoholics, they talk about seeing pink elephants and other sort of really weird sounding creatures. They're hallucinating. They're kind of entering into those types of realms of just madness, nonsensical madness. I remember very clearly a really interesting experience we had once in Ireland. I forget which town, but one of the towns in Ireland somewhere. And we were out there, not a big town. We were out there distributing Prabhupada's books in the streets. And two such drunkards came past. And it was late morning, it was maybe like 11 o'clock or something. And they were just completely, they could barely stand up. They were walking, but, changing direction and almost collapsing. It was extreme intoxication. And they walked past us. There were a couple of us there. They walked past us and, yelling and screaming and like that. And they walked past, maybe 5 or 10 meters at the most past. And one of them stopped and turned around and walked back to us. And in apparently a completely clear-headed state of mind, said, whatever you do, don't do like what we've done. Yeah, really, that was an experience. Don't do this. Don't do this. Please don't do this. And then he staggered off and, with his friend down the road. Yeah, so these lower creatures, not just your alcoholic in the street, they're sort of in the process of being trained up for the next stage. The next stage is you become some ghost, some goblin, hobgoblin, in Sanskrit terms, preta, bhuta, in, I guess, Zulu, tikalosh. Really, that's the next stage. It doesn't just end in a state of total obliteration, but there's a next stage. You enter into the world of the really subhuman creatures, you could say. But Lord Shiva here, of course, and we've talked about it a couple of times over the last days, Daksha is criticizing Lord Shiva for sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes associating with those entities, barely human to just, borderline actual creatures. And Daksha's criticizing Lord Shiva. But, of course, as Prabhupada points out here, and is well known, he is doing that out of his extreme mercy, extreme kindness, to give these hopeless, beyond hopeless entities the possibility, the opportunity they could become delivered. And as Prabhupada says here, he's so kind, he gives shelter to such creatures and gradually elevates them to spiritual consciousness. Talk about a preaching project, trying to interest, difficult people in Krishna consciousness. This is just on another level altogether. But that's what he does. It's what he does. And to do it as successfully as possible, he acts in certain respects like they act. Sometimes he smokes ganja and goes into some wild dance. But it's just for their sake. It's not that he actually loses it and just becomes, like a crazy fool. But it's all strategic, because he knows that these hopelessly unfortunate entities, they'll become attracted. And they'll think I'm one of them, and not just one of them, but they'll think I'm the leader of this type of entity, and then they'll become my followers. And yes, so as Prabhupada says, Lord Shiva takes charge of them. And therefore, some of them, of course not all of them, but some of them become devotees. And so he can give mercy to the lowest through to the very highest. And therefore, his name is Shiva, auspicious. And as Prabhupada says, that he is actually all auspicious. He's not just auspicious within certain sort of parameters of humans, but he's all auspicious. Anyone from the topmost demigods down to these entities benefit from his association and become delivered. So thus by his association, even such fallen souls can be elevated. Yes, so in different ways, Daksha's criticizing him. He doesn't bathe regularly. Well, when he's in the company of these entities, there may be some truth to that, although his body is pure anyway. But as Prabhupada points out, those who don't regularly bathe are not just inauspicious, but they find that they start having companions who are ghosts and demons. Yeah. Dirtiness attracts dirtiness. And these dirty entities, filthy living entities, if someone allows themselves to live in filthy conditions, in a filthy state, then without making any effort and without being able to avoid it, they will find that these entities start sort of hanging around. Yeah, and therefore sometimes they'll find their minds just start to become filled with crazy thoughts. This means it's the influence of some such extremely degraded entity entering the mind and introducing, sort of weird thoughts, and a person thinks, where did that thought come from? Well, it didn't come from nowhere. It came from one of these entities, because a lot of them have these types of mystical powers. So another thing, therefore we bathe at least once a day, full bath, and put on clean clothes at least once a day. Twice a day is better. Twice a day is better. Prabhupada, three times is recommended for some, but at least twice. Yeah. And I was reading, it's in, where is it in? Maybe in Jiva Goswami's purport to this verse, or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's. The Acharya says, in some types of groups of Vaishnavas, they have the practice of putting ashes on their bodies. Anyway, that's what he says. And we read that, it's Krishna telling Srimati Radharani in Padma Purana that actually Radharani complains, look at him, he's got ashes from cremated bodies on his body. And Krishna says, well, actually, they're the ashes of great devotees, and particularly the ashes of Sati herself. And she says, but he wears a garland of skulls and bones. And Krishna says, They are the skulls and bones of great devotees, so they're auspicious. And he eats, he's known for eating datura, which is actually, it's highly poisonous. It's deadly poisonous, in fact. But at best, it's like really tamagun. And Krishna makes the point that he eats the lowest things because he wants to leave the nice things for Krishna and the devotees, the nice prasadam. Let the devotees have the nice prasadam, and I'll just take some rubbish. So it's, one can understand how a person could think like that if they really don't understand things clearly. But actually, this is a subtle part of Krishna consciousness. Just like Krishna sometimes, or oftentimes, or even generally, performs activities which are exemplary, setting examples for us so we can learn how to act ourselves. But sometimes, Prabhupada calls it the Ishvara principle. Sometimes Krishna just acts in his own way, independent of rules and regulations, like arguably dancing with the wives of other men, and not just one, but numerous. Of course, there's an understanding to it, which makes it very clear that it's actually very nice. But we can understand how certain types of people would be shocked and disturbed. So such subtle aspects of Krishna consciousness, including the nature of Lord Shiva, in order to understand them at all, and in order to understand them, particularly to understand them clearly and nicely, so it all makes good sense, one has to be a devotee. If one's not a devotee, then due to the conditioned nature, one will automatically think the wrong thing. Automatically think the wrong thing. And therefore in Caitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami talks about really degraded people who misunderstand the nature of Lord Caitanya. Listen to this. The Caitanya Charitamrita pastimes of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu constitute a very secret literature. It is the life and soul of all devotees. Those who are not fit to relish this literature, who are envious like hogs and pigs, will certainly not adore it. However, this will not harm my attempt. Yes, so he is actually happy. In a sense, he's happy that they will not understand it, that it's not accessible to them, because he doesn't want people like that to read it. Yeah. So, yes, he's actually happy that they won't understand, and is happy that it will not harm his attempt to glorify Lord Caitanya in ways they don't understand. Hare Krishna. Any comment or question? No, it's not okay. Yeah.
I have a question, not very pleasant subject. Those, say, victims of suicide, now, obviously, they become subtle. And should they have the good fortune of associating with Lord Shiva, what will happen? Will Lord Shiva see that they get to Yamaraj, or will he keep them forever?
Well, Yamaraj, for sinful people, who were human, like sort of regular humans, so to speak, physically, but they became either, insane to the point where they commit suicide, which means they're insane, they've lost their sanity, or whether they become, so deeply entrenched in intoxication as humans, they're going to go to Yamaraj. And then from Yamaraj, they're going to go to these situations. A lot of them. Those who become ghosts, they may not, they won't go to Yamaraj. It's an interim stage. But others who get put in these lower species, like the Pretas, the Bhutas, and goblins and all that, they've already gone through Yamaraj. And now they're in their next life, and Lord Shiva comes along to deliver them. Yeah, basically.
So it is. It'll be still the same. The circumstances will be karmic.
Oh yes, very karmic. Yes, right.
Guru Maharaj, I had two questions. One was already answered.
Oh, okay.
The other is, when this pastime took place, it was not in this yuga. It was in a better yuga. So why so much of animosity and so much of word hurling, stuff like that, amongst great devotees?
Yeah. Well, we mentioned that a couple of days ago, that even though, it's such a yuga, this is demigod society, these are not just, just regular, ordinary, lost conditioned souls, but still that they're in the material world. And some susceptibility will always be there. Even Lord Brahma became bewildered on at least a couple of occasions. So, well, in the case, Prabhupada talks about the case of Lord Brahma becoming bewildered, attracted to his daughter, and then stealing the cowherd boys and cows from Krishna. And Prabhupada makes the point that it's to show us that while you're in the material world, you always have to be on guard. And you just cannot become complacent and just take it like, I'm Krishna conscious, okay, it's fine, so everything's fine. It's not. You always got to be on guard. Yeah. And Prabhupada once, with Sridhar Maharaj, one of our devotees unfortunately passed away, Prabhupada told him, the difference between you and me is that you can fall down any time, but I will not fall down. Then they went to the deity greeting, and Prabhupada was sort of muttering, his lips were moving in front of the deities like this, so he was, it appeared, uttering a prayer of some sort. And afterwards, Sridhar Maharaj asked him, what were you praying, Prabhupada? And Prabhupada said, I was praying that I will not fall down. And Sridhar Maharaj said, but you just told me that you won't fall down. And Prabhupada said, yes, that's because I'm always praying that I won't fall down. Yeah. So, anyway, in principle, the susceptibility is there. Lord Shiva also became bewildered. Lord Brahma. So what to speak of people like us? Yeah. So it's a warning that we should always recognize that the potential for falling down is there, and we must not give in to it. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.